into this one because I have been really excited to get Suzanna on. We have been sort of regularly meeting up at networking events. Susanna, since we last spoke, has even launched her own networking event. And you literally haven't stopped, have you? You've been out working this morning, and we were just chatting about that. So, Susanna, how are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on today. I'm really excited.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm just as excited as you are. You were saying to me that you've basically not stopped all week, and then this morning you were straight out seeing a client, and it was quite an interesting property.
Yeah, so it's a property that has been on the market for about 4 months. It has had very little interest, even at any viewings. And it's an older property in the old town of Stratford-upon-Avon. But it's quite unique in that it's got a garage, which is quite rare in the old town. So it's quite a high price point, but it just needs a bit of love. It's obviously old stock, not a new property, but we're doing quite a lot of sort of, well, a bit of renovation as well as staging. So I was just saying to you, there's no point putting furnishings and furniture into a property if you're just trying to mask other things that are going on there. So we're sort of like tarting it up, if you like, before we actually stage it. So it's quite a big job. So it'll be Easter weekend for me.
And we were saying that it's not just about sort of like you say the furniture that you're actually fully getting stuck in, doing a bit of DIY, trying to. Can you share some of the stuff that you've been doing this morning? Because yeah, it sounds quite hands-on.
Yeah, so like for example, the property's quite dated in a way, it had very colourful kitchen tiles, things like that. The handles are very dated. So it's just doing things like trying to update the kitchen. So we've painted all the tiles, we've changed the handles, and it's completely transformed the look of the kitchen. We've got guys, I was just there this morning because I was meeting some guys that are going to jet wash all the outside because it's just sort of very got very dirty over time. So that's just going to refresh the whole exterior. We're having the front door painted because it's right on the street. So it just needs to be freshened up, some pots and plants, windowsills, all the exterior windowsills are going to be rubbed down and painted. So it's just fixing all the things that um, you don't want people to notice things. You want them to walk in or walk up to the property and just think, oh, wow, this property's been looked after. And I think, before you start putting furniture and furnishings in, you need to make sure all those things are done properly. We've had all the carpets cleaned, so it's nice and fresh. So yeah, just fixing all the things that, need to be fixed and then making it look lovely with the furniture and furnishings.
Yeah, that jet washing is so simple, but it makes such a difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, massive difference. Yeah. Because there's a
Definitely.
lot of decking and a lot of it's all decking and paving slabs. And they're all, they've just got the green algae on and stuff because they
Yeah.
haven't been cleaned for a long time. And it's just going to, and it's got a beautiful dining room with a big roof light that looks out onto the garden. And it's just going to be such a feature. Whereas at the moment you look out and you think, oh, but once that garden is lovely, it's actually going to be an extension of that dining room, which is going to look really, really nice.
Amazing. So I'm going to take you right back, Susanna, in terms of your career. Have you always been in interior design and home staging? Like how did you get into it? What was it that sort of really sparked your passion for this?
Well, I've always loved interiors. Even as a child, I was always redesigning my bedroom and changing things and moving things around. So it's always been something that I've loved, and I've always liked transformations. When I was young, I loved those transformation shows you had on the telly and stuff. So I did work. I have worked in interior design for about 15 years. Um, and also in marketing. And I think the thing to point out, and also I have a company that does wedding decoration as well. So I like to make things look nice. But I think the thing about staging is it's not. interior design. You use elements of interior design when you're staging and styling, but actually, staging is a marketing tool. It's there to help sell a property. With interior design, you are tailoring your design to your client. They are the end user. So you're going to be discussing, what their preferences are, what they like, and then obviously advising them on that. Whereas staging is literally a marketing tool to try and improve the appearance of a property, to create a feeling of aspiration, so that when people walk in the door, they have a wow factor and they want to buy that property. Um, it's not going to be the end user. Say you're staging for a property developer, that property developer isn't going to be living in the house, so you're not designing for the end user, but you are designing to try and appeal to the greatest amount of people. That doesn't mean you want it to be bland, but you do want to sort of have a design that appeals to the greatest amount of people, so that you get as many viewings as possible and as many offers as possible. So I think the key is, although we do use interior design tips and techniques when we're styling, staging is a marketing tool in the end.
100%. Yeah, I mean, I was saying off camera that when we were estate agents, or when I was an estate agent, if a developer or an investor would come to us, they would say to us, "Oh, do you think we should put a bit of furniture in here or whatever?" And I think wrongly we assumed that the developer would be putting that furniture in there themselves. So we were a bit like, I don't know what you're going to do with this. So we would always say, no, it's a blank canvas. Let someone come in and get a feel for the place and visualize it. But actually, what you're doing is you're changing that psychology from having to let the buyer do the work to actually aspire to give the buyer the aspiration to buy a property of that standard and have that nice furniture in there. And so
Yeah.
it's not just sort of designing it as someone else would design it, it's so that they want to design it like that.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think a lot of people think that a blank canvas with no furniture in, it's going to look bigger, and people are going to be walking and go, "Oh, yes, I can put that there and do that there." But 80% of people can't do that.
Mm.
They don't have the vision to do that, and they find it really hard, especially when spaces are sort of maybe an awkward space or a long, thin room. Or they think, "Well, where would I put my sofa? How would I live in this space?" And they find that really difficult. So, um, yeah, coming away from sort of like empty properties, um, you want to put furniture and furnishings in there, as you say, to create aspiration and really to create emotion. Because if we think about buying as consumers, we have different reasons for buying. One reason is because of absolute need, the functional things, like toilet roll. Although we might be swayed on the toilet roll if it's softer and longer and whatever. So there's all these things that are going to persuade us to buy something. But ultimately, I mean, why do so many people buy diet products? Because they want to be thinner. It's not because they want to eat a diet product. It's the feeling and the emotion that's involved in that. So it's not, when you think about selling a house, someone doesn't just want to buy a house, they want to buy a home. So when they walk in, when they have a home, there's emotion involved in it. So it could be for so many different reasons. Someone might be have a family, they want to create that home for their family, or they might be thinking of having a family, or someone may have just got divorced and they're moving in on their own and they want to have that sort of safe space. There's lots of different reasons and there's lots of emotions involved in buying a property.
Mm.
And the emotion that we want to create when you're selling a property is one of joy and happiness and peace. And by staging a property, it sounds, you know, it sounds, what's the word I'm looking for? Uh, the psychology of it, really. It's the psychology of it. You want that person to go in and be wowed. And talking about that, something I wanted to mention about emotion in buying properties is I've been looking at a few surveys that have been done by different people, estate agents and different companies and newspapers. And there's quite a few surveys with where it's a heterosexual couple who has the actual buying decision of a property. And obviously, it is a mixed buying decision, but a lot of the time, the female has uh, that ultimate decision, maybe not the ultimate decision, but they actually sway the decision. um, and they are more likely to be swayed by their emotions when they walk in a property, so they are more likely to be swayed by the wow factor, by the way it feels when they're in there, whereas the surveys say that the males are more functional. They're more about the finance, they're more about what work needs to be done, maybe the hard finishes and things like that. So if it's the case, then you're going to want to appeal to that element. You're going to want to create that emotion so that you can be persuaded. You can be persuading that person to buy. And the fear of missing out, if there's a really nice property on the market, people start to think, oh, well, this is going to go quickly, and like to try and push that offer. So emotion plays a really, really big part um, in selling a property. And by staging that property with the beautiful furnishings, putting things in the right place. I think you mentioned when we talked about doing this webinar what some of the mistakes can be
Mm.
when furnishing property, or what property developers themselves, if they do it themselves, some of the mistakes might be. I mean, I don't know if you want me to talk about that.
I would lovely to, yeah, because I think I can, any mistake you make, I think I'm pretty much going to hit the nail on the head with each one of those. Those are the sort of mistakes that I would make. So yeah, I'd love to find out.
So, um, obviously when you're a stager, you're trained, and you have a natural inclination to be able to see where things are in an empty property. So I can walk in and I can think, yes, that will go there, that will go there, that will go there, I could put that there. And so it's about making sure that you maximize the space of the room. um, and that doesn't necessarily mean placing furniture around the edges of the room. So I think a lot of people don't know what to do. So they literally just place the furniture next to the walls, around the edge of the room, facing a telly. Um, Depending on the size of the room, that's not necessarily what you have to do. And I think if you look through some of these interior magazines and things like that, even in small rooms, um, things can sometimes be placed in a different way that is more attractive and actually helps the flow of the property. So, for example, the house I'm working on at the moment, you walk straight into the front room, which is long and thin, but you need to make sure there's a trackway through to the kitchen and the dining room. So you've got to be really thoughtful about where you're putting the furniture. So that's one thing about where you're putting the furniture. Um, I think for property developers particularly, um, color schemes are a big thing. Now, in previous years, a big color has been grey. Okay, so there was a massive trend for grey. And it was great, like that was it became the new magnolia, but in a nicer way. It's like that blank canvas color. But I think there's been a tendency to over grey because it's neutral. So what I find in a lot of properties that have been renovated is there's grey carpet, there's grey walls. Sometimes when furniture and furnitures are put in, they're grey. Okay, so what you've got is this big grey box that's really not appealing, because if you think of the natural colour of grey, it's quite a dull, overcast sort of colour. It's a great as a background, but you don't want to use it as a feature color.
Yeah.
So I see a lot of like more probably flips, property flips, rather than new developments, where people are putting grey. And I think it's because it's worked in the past, but you have to keep on top of trends. And people are coming in and they're especially young people, when they're buying, they're very aware of what's in and what's not in. And I'm not saying it needs to be a themed trend, but just obviously the colours, the feeling that the feelings that people are getting about those colours. And also layering. If you're going to use a neutral basis, you need to layer with different tones of that color, different materials. If you've got quite a neutral room, you're going to have different materials. You're going to have natural materials and maybe leather and throws and wool and, for example, rather than it all being just very flat. So I think that's a mistake sometimes made is not actually keeping up with what's of the now and using a palette or a decorating style that has worked in the past for you, but actually is not working anymore. And you think, oh yeah, no, that's worked. I'll use that. I did that last time and the blueprint, but you've got to keep up with what's current. So obviously, as stagers and stylists, we know what's current. We also like to put colour in because even if it's just a pop of colour with cushions and accessories, it doesn't have to be like big blocks of coloured sofas and things like that. But that helps the pictures that you have online to pop as well. And it makes it stand out from others. So those are some of the things. Trying to think of some other things. Is there anything you can think of?
Yeah, so I've got Emily, my partner, is in interior design, and she warned me don't say anything stupid before I come on this webinar, because I regularly ask her about, what the color palette of the day is, and yeah, what textures we should be using, and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, is there when you're sort of you've walked into a room, you've scoped it out, like um in terms of the flow of the room. Let's say you go into a box room and it's not immediately obvious that you can get a bed in there. What would you how would you handle that situation? Because I think that's what concerns a lot of people, and this is probably why we really need to get into the habit of using home stagers that have the expertise to use that kind of space. How are you sort of setting that up? What kind of conversations are you having with the client around, a really pokey room?
Okay. So I'm going to go backwards from that and then get to the pokey room, if you like,
Right.
because so we were talking about mistakes. So I'm not saying it's a mistake, but a lot of new builds you go into, there's certain things that don't work. That obviously it's, I think it's not all developments. Some are very, very well thought out, but there are some developments where you go in, you think, well, the double bed's going to go there, but this door from the ensuite is going to hit the bed. So, okay, there's a boiler cupboard. It's in the living room. That means you can't have a three-seater sofa there. You can only have a two, and you've got a boiler cupboard in the living room. Oh, this downstairs toilet is huge, but this room next door is really tiny, or there's no storage. No storage is a massive thing in some smaller new builds. So we're getting to the small room in a
Right.
second.
Yeah.
So these are a lot of things that people are looking for, especially if they've got families. They want as much space as they can get. Um, and storage is a massive one. If you've got a young family, you've got so much stuff. And if you haven't got a garage or anything like that, you've got to be able to fit that stuff into the house. And I think sometimes, in my opinion, developers they try to maximize the room space to make the rooms look as big as possible, but they're not putting any storage in those spaces. And in the end, you do need storage. So that's one of the things that stages have to do. They have to address any issues with the property that buyers are going to flag. Oh, there's no storage. Right, we need to put something in that room that's going to show them that they can have some storage in that room.
Mm.
Um, so coming back to your point about the small box room, um, every room needs to have a function. So that's why staging is really good as well, because when someone's looking around a house, they're not necessarily obvious. Some things are obvious, some rooms are obvious, but every room needs to have a function. And sometimes, like a small room, you think, well, what would this room be? And what you want to do is set out to that person what this room could be. Now, that depends on the property. Okay. If this property is being developed to young professionals, or like a young couple, for example, and it's a 3-bedroom property, but it's got this really small box room. They haven't got any children yet, but they've also got this second bedroom that they could use. So, what are you going to do with this box room? So, it could be that you make it into a study, because that study is going to be, a lot of people working from home these days, is going to be more beneficial to that target customer than another bedroom or a child's bedroom, for example. So first thing is really thinking about the target customer and what they might need. Obviously, if it's a box room and you're making it into a study, that's quite easy because you just need a desk, chair, lamp, whatever. If you need that bedroom to be that room to be a bedroom, then you've got to try and make it into a bedroom. So there are some little tricks that you can use. And it is really about sometimes it is a little bit of trickery. So, for example, you might put a sort of very nice fold up sofa bed. So it's like a room that's got like a chair bed in. So what you're saying is, oh, you've got this little room, this little snug, but you can make it into a bedroom by unfolding this chair bed. Okay, so that's one way. So someone's still perceiving that as a bedroom. If you can get a bed in there, then you want to get a bed in there. Um, Sometimes we have rooms that are only a single room, really, but you can get a small double, a 4-foot double in there. And what that does is it's saying to the person, this is a double room. Oh, this is another double room. It might be a very small double, but in that moment, they see a double bed with 2 pillows. It's a double bed.
Mm.
So it's about perception. So it's helping, um, your client is the developer. So you are actually helping your client give these perception, these perceptions, have people have these perceptions of your property. So if you can get a double bed in there, even if you make it a small double, you're making it obvious that it's a double bedroom. But it really is about tailoring it to the clientele. It could be a hobby room, it could be you just want to dress it the way you think it will appeal to the most buyers of that property.
Amazing. Um, One of the questions I had, and this is sort of from personal experience, is being an estate agent, you can go out there and if the house is horrible, um, and they have got polystyrene tiles on the ceiling, and the house is basically falling down. As an estate agent, you can still be positive about that house and say, we're going to sell this. Like, we just have to get the price right.
Yeah.
I guess as in your role, you can't do that because if the house doesn't look great and you go in and you tell them that you need to make these certain improvements, how do you find you sort of negotiate that with clients? Because obviously, if their current design is horrible and you've
Mm.
got to go in there and make it look really nice for sale, how do you sort of make them aware that currently it's not going to sell in its current styling?
It's funny you should say that because I had that exact scenario recently. I staged a property which was where the owner had passed away and the 2 daughters were selling the property. And it's quite similar to the one I'm doing at the moment, actually. It was basically in good nick. It was a little bit dated. The carpets were a bit dated, the curtains. We took all the curtains down. And but basically it was painted in a neutral colour and it had been kept well. It just needed a hand. Um, Great. And it looked lovely once we'd done it. Okay. So we didn't really need to do any remedial work. And whilst I was doing it, a neighbour came to me, and again, it was well, it wasn't a neighbour; it was the son who was clearing out a house at the end of the street.
Mm.
And he asked me what I was doing, and I told him, and he said, "Oh, that's great," because he was just clearing out a house because his father had unfortunately passed away. And he said, "Would you come and have a look at our house?" No, it was a totally different ball game. Okay, it was the same house, but it was in such a bad state of repair. Um, there were I, there were numerous things, particularly. I think one of the things that's difficult is sorry, I'm just reading Mark's comment.
I saw that as well.
One of the things that is really important are kitchens and bathrooms. Well, they don't have to be the most up to date, but you need to be able to make them look reasonable. Um, and sometimes properties aren't just made to be staged, they're made to be sold at the right price and done up, and renovated and flipped. Okay. So I actually said to them, look, I could turn around and say to you, yes, I can do this. I said, but it's not going to make much difference. You're going to be wasting your money because it's not in a state that putting some nice furniture in is going to actually, people are not going to be able to look past these other things, and they shouldn't be looking past these other things because these things need addressing.
Yeah.
I said, so unless you can do this and this, I mean, it would have need to be completely redecorated, new flooring, the carpets were threadbare, there's only so much you can do. And I think in that case you have to be honest with the client and say, I'm not going to waste your money. um that staging is not going to be the answer for this. And I think pricing a property at the right price is really important. I think staging is one marketing tool, but you've got to get other things right as well. You've got to be at the right price, not just the highest price that estate agent's given you. You've got to have really good photographs taken, not some amateur photographs. You've got to have a proper photography. And I think there's lots of elements that will help sell your house quicker. It's not standalone things. So in that sense, if I feel that I can work with what's there, I absolutely will. Like the house I'm doing now, the kitchen was fine, just the tiles were dated. We've sorted that. We can sort that. That's not a problem. If I don't feel, or I think it's very expensive, unless that client's prepared to sort of renovate it before we stage it, and usually they're not, it's better to sell it as a doer-upper of the refurb.
Yeah, totally agree. Sam Carter, who's a property developer from Cambridge, he's got a really interesting point on this, which is that unless the property is priced reasonably, no one's going to come and view it. I mean, if it is overpriced, they'll come and view it to sort of check it out and sort of have a nosy, but
Yeah,
then seriously considering buying. And what he does is he does it on the flip reverse. So he stages it and makes sure that the interior design is like far beyond what anyone else has seen on the market. But
yeah.
what he does is he invites all the estate agents round at the same time, so that they all value the property at the same time and they outcompete each other.
Ah,
So when he's having the revaluation survey done, and the price is obviously going to be higher. And then when he decides to put it on the market, he hosts an open day so that all the buyers come in at once.
yeah,
And the
brilliant.
price is not the top one, it's not the bottom price, it's the middle price, so that it drives the most interest. And then he gets all the buyers in at the same time, or potential buyers, so that they can see this beautiful property that's been kitted out really nice, and see all the other levels of competition. And that's what drives the price up. It's
Yeah,
not necessarily the, going in at a high price and expecting people to react to it
yeah.
straight away.
So that's very the way the American market works.
Mm,
Staging has been big in America and Australia for quite a while. It's reasonably new in this country. I mean, obviously, uh, big developers have been doing show homes for
yeah.
years. There's a reason that they do show homes. There's a reason that they do that. But staging individual properties is relatively new, and it's building momentum in this country. And that's exactly the sort of thing they do in the States, is that they stage the property. There's no question. as I said before, it's part of the marketing budget. Well, it's part of the total project budget. I think that's what we're trying to sort of like promote as stages in this country, to factor it in to the budget. And it's something that you do because people are doing it and you need to compete with those people. But to factor it in, to do the staging as part of standard, and then have an open day. And that is what they do in the US generally. And then, as you say, people see other people looking at it. And it's that thing I was talking about of FOMO. You know, they go in, it's absolutely beautiful. You've got all these people thinking, oh, I'd really like to live here. And oh, they look really interested. And it's creating that momentum and it's creating that desirability and people thinking, oh, they, you know, someone's going to put an offer in on this. We're going to have to think quickly about this. And it really does drive sales. And it's a really good strategy, I think, to do
I
that.
totally agree. Um, we're sort of getting towards the money side of it. So I'm going to
Okay.
ask you about that in a second. Mark,
Yeah.
Alan, I can see your questions in the chat. Thanks so much for submitting those. We are going to get on to questions from you guys in a second. So if anyone else has got any questions that they'd like to put to Susanna, please put them in the chat and we'll get round to those very shortly. But yeah, in terms of we're slowly moving into that sort of category of money and
Yes.
quantifiable benefit, which is what all developers and house sellers want to hear. Have you noticed a quantifiable benefit in terms of houses that are staged versus ones that are not staged?
Yes. So the first thing to say is like people are probably thinking, well, how much does it cost to stage? Okay, so we'll address that. Um, it varies. The industry standard is probably around 1% of the asking price of the property. So if you've got a property that is on the market for £500,000, you're looking at around £5,000 to stage that property. But it's a movable feast because it depends on the amount of bedrooms you've got. It depends on where the property is, who you're appealing to. So I've just been asked to quote for some flats in Chelsea. Now they're 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom flats, but they're obviously a very high price point. So whereas I might charge less for a 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom flat where I live, in Chelsea, you're going to have to make sure that the furniture that you're putting in there and the furnishings are of a standard that is going to be compatible with where they are and their clientele. So you know, it is movable and you do have to think about that. Sometimes it can be as little as 0.5%. The higher the price of the property, the lower the percentage generally. Which seems a bit unfair because if you've just got a small property, but if you think about it, you're still going to need to have all the furniture for the living spaces. And even if there's less bedrooms, the main areas are going to need to be furnished, the dining room, the living area. So the higher you go with the price point, the usually the percentage is lower. So if you've got £1 million property, uh, you know, you're not going to spend £100,000 on staging. But you know, it will be a lot lower percentage. So that's where the costs sort of come in. Sorry, what was your original question?
So in terms of quantifiable benefit, like can you
Oh, right,
see
yeah,
a
yeah,
difference between ones that have been
yeah.
staged and ones that haven't?
So if you think about the benefits, first of all, if you stage from the outset, so if you're a property developer and you stage from the outset, so you might say, oh, well, it'll probably sell without being staged. Yes, but how quickly is it going to sell? Okay. Is it going to sell within 4 weeks? Is it going to sell? I mean, like, you know, you were talking about the guy who does the open day. Sometimes you can get an offer on that day.
Yeah.
Okay. So what does that mean for the developer? Well, that means the sale can go through quicker, they can get their money out of the project quicker, and they can move on to their next project. What is it that that property developer wants ultimately? Okay. So they want to get their money out and they want to move on. they want to make money. Why do they want to make money? Because they want to create a life for themselves that's more comfortable for them and their families. Okay, so again, we're getting to emotions. It's all about emotions. It's what you want. So if you've got a property that's on the market, and really, if you think about £5,000, you think, oh, that's a lot of money. If you've put that in your budget, it's done. If you then have to come back because it's not selling and spend £5,000, it's still good to do it. But obviously, you've got to find that money up front to do that. So obviously, what I'm saying is factoring it in first is better. But if you've then got to reduce your property, now as an estate agent, you will be able to answer this question. What would your first price reduction be as a percentage? If you were reducing a property, what would your
5%.
5%?
Mm.
Okay. So 5% of, oh, I've got to do my maths now. 5%, £500,000. So 10% is £50,000. 5% is £25,000. So if your agent recommends, and a lot of agents do recommend, drop the price because it's easier for them and they don't have to have an uncomfortable conversation about we haven't sold it. They'll encourage you to drop the price rather than staging, not because they know it's better, but it's easier. Dropping by £25,000 when you could be spending five and achieving at least the asking price, you would hope.
Yeah.
Even more. Sometimes it's more than the asking price. With that open day example, you might get a bidding war. I mean, I did one house and I sold, and it basically got £10,000 over the asking price because so many people were interested in it and it went to sealed bids. So you can actually achieve more for the property than your asking price, but you at least want to achieve that. So what we say is, think about what your price reduction will be. Your first price reduction will be at least 5%. Why not try and stage it and achieve your asking price? That's exactly what's happened with the property that I'm doing at the moment. Luckily, the agent, which is Knight Frank, have the agent, she gets staging. She understands it. And she could have easily, being a big sort of branded estate agent, she could have easily said, just drop the price. But she didn't. She said, I think you should try staging it first because I think you're not showing off the potential of this property. And that's the way the client has gone. And they have spent less than £5,000 on doing that. So I think that is a quantifiable benefit. Also, I've had properties that have I've had a property that was on the market for over a year. And when we staged it, it was the middle of summer last year. Um, so it's, difficult time to sell because people are going on holidays and they're not really thinking about houses. And it sold within 10 weeks after being on the market for over a year because it was staged. So there are lots of, you're then getting lots of reasons for staging. You're getting your money out quicker. If you sell quicker, you get your money out quicker, and there's a best chance of getting your asking price or even more. So, as far as I'm concerned, it's a win-win.
Sold. I want to stage my house and I don't even want to put it on the market.
I'm free in about 3 months.
Amazing. So yeah, literally, I would never have thought of it that way. So if you're dropping the price by 5%, you're dropping a whole 4% you don't need to because you haven't even tried staging yet. That makes
Yeah,
so much sense.
yeah, yeah.
Amazing. So
And it's amazing how many people do that.
yeah,
It's amazing. There was a guy who he had a property on for 1.5 million, and he dropped his price by £100,000 without trying staging first.
that's money he'll
And
never get back.
he could have spent 20,
Yeah,
you
because
know.
you can't. You would literally have to take it off the market for 12 months and then put it back on because otherwise the market will already know that you've
Yeah,
suddenly increased your price, and
yeah.
that's yeah.
And also, as a estate agent, like on Rightmove, there are different brackets, aren't there, of
Yeah.
searches, of prices. So you might even be recommended to change a bracket, which might even mean that you need to drop it by even more to appeal to more people. So it's there's lots of factors involved.
Well, that's why I said 5%, and it may have changed. Obviously, it's been a few years since I've been
I
an
think
estate
it
agent.
still
But
is.
yeah, if you change it by more than 5%, you change a new. So basically, it changes the price bracket, but it also it re-emails anyone that's signed up to the Rightmove mailing list since then.
Yeah.
So that's why you would always do it. There was no real logic other than that to drop that price for that amount. So
Mm,
yeah, that's really interesting. If they basically just took it off the market for a month, staged it, put it back on, all like as if it's a brand new property, they're not
yeah.
going to have to immediately take that hit on the price. We're
Yeah.
going to jump into some of the questions. Obviously, me and you sort of
Okay.
had a laugh at Mark's opening question. Um, Not a fan of estate agents. Don't blame me, Mark. Not a problem. But do you get the sort of majority of work or recommendations from estate agents, or I'm guessing a lot of them still need converting and understanding.
Yeah. Um, Okay, so I've got a lot of work from estate agents, and I think once you've worked for an estate agent and you've proved your worth, if you like, and you've done a good job, then they're more likely to use you again and again. So that's really good. So it's really good for stagers to build relationships with estate agents. Um, and but also going direct to property developers as well. So my main clients would be property developers and estate agents. Um, what was I going to say? Oh, what was the question again? Sorry, my brain
It's
went.
all right. No, so where obviously is it estate agents that you mainly get sort of your recommendations from, or is there sort of other places?
Yeah, well, I do quite a lot of networking,
Yeah.
so that really does help as well because um, you the more people you meet, I think I've put this in a post recently. When I started networking, I thought it was about going and getting business. Okay, I'm going to go and tell people what I do, and I'm going to try and get their business. Okay, which was very naive, but I've learned a lot. And it isn't it really, it's about building relationships. Ultimately, that's why you go, but it's about building relationships with people. So the relationship that we've built together has been over a period of time, and it's great. And with Mark and lots of other people that I've met through networking, um, we've built those relationships. Now that person may never have any work for you, okay? Or they might have some work for you, but they don't have any work for you now. Um, but they might never have any work for you, but they might know someone that has work for you. The amount of people that I recommend to other people, I love recommending people. I love promoting other people. I love, I've just had the carpets cleaned at my property. He did such a good job. I'm going to put a social media post out and tag him, because I like helping other people with their businesses, and the people do too. So, I just, had a job, a quote. I've just done a quote. The guy was recommended by his estate agent to contact me. So anyone you meet, especially with property, anyone you meet, everyone has something to do with property. They either buy property to live in, they rent property to live in, or they're in the property world. So anyone you meet can be a potential client, um, and can be referred. You can be referred to people. So I think it's just really important to um, build relationships with people, and also particularly if you're on a personal journey. A lot of us are entrepreneurs. A lot of property people, we're entrepreneurs. We're building our own life. We're aspiring to a certain way of living, and we want to build that ourselves. Um, and we're all on a journey. And I think if you can support people on that journey, they will support you. It's about reciprocity. And things will come back to you. And that's not the reason I support people. I just like supporting people. I think, if you do that, things do come back to you, and uh, things are coming back to me. So think networking is a really, really good way, because referrals are a very good way, because people um, will trust that person's word. So word of mouth is a really good way from networking.
I think this is the perfect opportunity to talk about your networking event because you've recently launched. I know we've got some people on the call that have attended and said it's amazing. And it's in mine and Emily's favourite location, the Boston Tea Party in Stratford.
Yeah,
They do
yeah.
brilliant breakfast. So, yeah, tell us about it.
Well, it's not actually my networking event, but I'm the host. So I host a networking event for Talk Business UK, which is run by Jonathan Smith and Catherine Smith, who are lovely, lovely people. And they have different networking events all over, like Worcester, that goes down to sort of Cheltenham and Bath, and sort of like, the Midlands area. And they're different types of networking events. There's a property, Talk Property, which those are the ones I started going to, and that's when I joined the Talk Business Network. And they're really, really good as property events. They're usually quite small. So you go to some events which are big, which are great, and you get a lot of education from those. You get people giving talks about different things, and you can learn a lot of things. So like TDM, for example, that we
Yeah.
go to, really, really good networking event. But there's a lot of people in the rooms. There's a lot of people to network with. It's great. I like the Talk Business one as well, because it's not big, it's small, and therefore you're able to sit around a table, and usually there's food involved, which is nice. And at Boston Tea Party, so you sort of like have like a breakfast or a brunch, and you chat while you're eating, and it's just really relaxed and really informal, and you get a chance to go around and everyone to talk about what they do. But I do one which is a cafe. So it's not necessarily targeted towards property. It's a business cafe. So it's anyone in any sort of business that wants to network and wants to talk to local people. And Mark's been along to that one. So thank you, Mark. It's very kind. And it's just nice to meet other people in business. And you never know who's going to be able to help you with your business. I mean, some of the people you meet, I have definitely used people I've met through networking, or have been referred to me through networking in my business. So it works. And yeah, so the Talk Business Cafe is the one I host, and it's the last Monday of every month in Boston Tea Party. Just a plug there.
Amazing, brilliant. Yeah, please, guys, do go along to it. It is good fun. I'm going to be going very soon. I have promised you I
Good.
will be there. I can't wait. So, yeah, we're good. We're almost out of time, so I'm going to run through a quick couple of quick questions from the audience. We've got one in from Alan and one in from Annie. So, do stages do photography as well, or do you bring in a photographer for your projects?
It depends on the individual. You might have some stages that are actually photographers as well, being creative people. I think usually I would. So there's two things. If a property is on with an estate agent, so for example, the property I'm doing now, Knight Frank are going to come and take some more photos to market it. So there's no need for me to take photographs. Okay. But on a different project, it may be that I have some photographs taken, and I would use a professional photographer to do that. I might take some for my own social media myself, so that I can get it on there quickly. But if it's for the client and the client requires photos, then we would get a professional photographer to come in and take those photos. And obviously, professional photography is going to be much better than any photos you can take, in an amateur way. So their photos are really important. They're the first thing that hooks in online. And let's face it, most people do buy online now,
Yeah.
and you're competing with all these different people, and you can just swipe away. So you've got to attract that person's eye straight away. And if you've got really good staging and really good photography, then you're most of the way there to get that viewing. So yeah, it just depends on the project really. But yes, we can use professional photographers to take photos.
Amazing. So Annie's put a question in. What do you think of virtual staging for rooms? Can you supply this service to property developers as on occasions the house apartment is not ready to physically stage?
Yeah. So I think virtual staging is great for certain reasons, for certain purposes. So I don't provide virtual staging myself. I do know that some stages also have both services. I don't personally do that. I think virtual staging is fantastic for new developments where, exactly as Annie said, the property's not ready yet and you want to be able to see what it's going to look like. And again, it's about lifestyle. So you're promoting a lifestyle. You're not able to do it in the flesh. So you do it with virtual staging. And there's some very good virtual staging that you can get now. I think it's important to let people know that it is virtual staging, and I think you are supposed to actually state that. So I think that's great. I think it's a really good surface. What I don't think is that it takes the place of actual staging, because for me, I mean, a lot of my promotion is about creating joy. When I do staging, I want to create joy. I want someone to walk in and feel joyous. I want them to love it and be wowed. If you have a property that is virtually staged because you're trying to do it cheaper, because it is a cheaper service than actual staging, and it's less cumbersome, obviously, then um, when that person then goes to view the property, and even if they know that that was virtually staged, there's going to be, and then what's the initial emotion going to be? Back to emotions, it's going to be a bit disappointed. Okay, so do you want your initial emotion of your potential buyer to be joy, or do you want it to be disappointment? And even if property's nice, they're going to think, oh, I wish I could see it with those furnishings in. And so there's a feeling, a negative feeling immediately. You don't want to create any negative feelings. So my personal view is that virtual staging is brilliant. It serves a really good purpose, but it's not, I would not recommend using it in place of actual staging.
Yeah, I think from a marketing perspective, it's great for lead generation, but if you want the property to sell, it needs to be physically staged so that they can walk
It's,
around it.
yeah, exactly, exactly. It works hand in hand. Yeah.
Amazing. Um, Susanna, I've absolutely loved today. Thank you so much. It has
So
been a
have I.
good
Thank you.
Friday. So if anyone wants to find you, reach out to you. Maybe they've got a project coming up that they know about. How can they reach out to you?
Okay, so I'm on LinkedIn under Suzanna Kelly and the Home Staging Crew. I'm on Instagram, the underscore Home Staging Crew. You can find me on Facebook, the Home Staging Crew, or Suzanna Kelly. Um, yeah, everywhere really. If you're obviously a member of the UK Homes Network, I am Suzanna Kelly. So yeah, or just type me in. You might find me on Google. I don't know. Ooh, I wonder, maybe not. I don't know what you'll find.
Well, I can certainly say if you're at a networking event in the West Midlands, there's probably statistically a high chance that you'll bump into Susanna at some point. So yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, and I always look for you in the room wherever I am because I know it's always going to be a good networking event. So
Oh,
yeah, it's been amazing to see your business just going so well, and obviously all the support you've given me, obviously growing UK Homes Network. So we're really proud to have you in our membership. Guys, that concludes our session for today. If you want to sign up as a premium member, you can now do that with your discount code of premium 50 if you want to watch the recording back, available in the platform. But as I say, we'll be back on the 2nd of May with property market intel, so we'll look forward to seeing you then. Have a lovely Easter. I'll still be reading all your posts over the weekend in UK Homes Network. And if you need anything, please feel free to reach out to me. But thank you so much, Susanna. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Chris. And I just want to say, I think you have done amazingly. I think the UK Homes Network is such an amazing platform and it's just growing massively. So well done to you and David. It's just fantastic. And thank you for having me on. I've really enjoyed it.
Well, that sums up your webinar. You're going to get a bit of emotion out of me now. So thank you. I really appreciate that. Have a lovely weekend, guys. Take care, and we'll catch you soon.
Happy Easter!